Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the Business Development Guild. We appreciate your attendance. Just a few quick housekeeping issues before we get started. Everyone except for the presenters is going to be in listen-only mode for this virtual meeting. If you have a question, we would love to hear from you. Just type the question into the chat box and we'll get to as many as we can during the question and answer period. And yes, we will be making a recording and we'd be happy to share the information after the call. Again, today is April 28th, and this is the Southern California Business Development Guild first virtual meeting. Welcome. My name is Alex Duggan, and I am a Senior Project Manager with LMI 360, a sales and marketing organization based on service and technology providers that support the commercial built environment. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce Joe McGovern, Certified Business Developer and founder of the McGovern Group. Joe, welcome.
Yes, thank you very much, Alex. And thank you, everybody, for being here. We're excited about what this platform can offer, and we're excited about the topic and the panel that you're about to hear. We want to say a special thanks to the Southern California chapter for putting this on. Like Alex said, my name is Joe McGovern. I'm a co-founder of the Business Development Guild. And I also have the McGovern Group that Alex mentioned is an environmental consulting firm providing environmental and building due diligence for commercial real estate and merger acquisition professionals. But here at the Guild, we believe we have a very straightforward yet important mission. And the mission statement is that is to be the premier source of education, coaching, and support for the business development profession. We do that in a number of ways that we will get to in a second. But before that, I'd like to say a special thank you to Alex and LMI 360, also Ted Ritter, principal of the firm. They're based in Phoenix, and I believe that they have clients worldwide in addition to the United States and in Phoenix. Ted is also on our advisory board. So they're our technology sponsor today. They've been instrumental in helping us put these virtual meetings together, so thank you to them. As you can see, we do have other sponsorship opportunities, not only for meetings, but the overall chapter. Anyone who has any interest in that, we'd love to have a conversation. We think there's great value. Information can be found on our website, Business Development Guild, but we prefer to have a conversation, so feel free to reach out. All right, quick thing about our objectives of what we're trying to do. When we formed the BD Guild a few years ago, we took a look around and we made some observations about, okay, when business development doesn't work with the professional or the firm, what are some of the common denominators? And one that kind of leapt out in front of us for all of us to see, and that was when the BD and the operational teams were not necessarily aligned as much as they could or should be, either from the strategic planning to the ways and means to pursuit management. If they're not aligned, it really made it difficult for success. So not only that in terms of not necessarily being as effective, but it also put the business development person and professional in a vulnerable state. So a primary objective that we have is to help bridge that gap between business development and operational professionals, help teams become better aligned. So yes, here at the Guild, we are a business development professional platform, but it's really about helping teams become better aligned. And we do that through meetings like this, through special education that we'll talk about in a second. So we try to collaborate and educate BD and operations personnel on the definition, process, and teamwork that goes into it. In return, that helps maximize return on the business development investment that a company has, the greater success the company has. And that'll elevate the profession and also the professional. So those are some of our key objectives. And before I go on, we have our first of 3 poll questions. I'll turn it back to Alex if I could. And take it away, Alex.
Thanks, Joe. So we would love to hear from you all. Our first question is, do you consider your BD and ops teams as being aligned? In just a moment, you'll see it pop up on your screen. We would love if you would take a minute and share your results with us. I'm seeing a lot of yeses, which is great to see.
That is a really good news. That's really good news.
Yes. Yes. Oh, a couple no's, but mostly yeses. We'll give it one last chance. All right. Thank you all for sharing. You can see on the screen mostly yeses, and then if the screen does not close automatically, you'll see a little blue X in the top right that you can close it. And back to you, Joe.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. And that's really good news that most of those answers are yes. It can be extremely nuanced. A very yes or no. It's a pretty, I don't know, it's not necessarily one or the other, but the fact that people's initial responses are yes, that's a really good sign. So congratulations and kudos to all of you and your organizations. The BD Guild is a membership organization. We think it's a terrific value. Obviously, we have the discounts on meetings and training and events. We have members-only events. The +1 meeting registration is, the way we're set up is that there's a full-time member. Typically, that is the business development professional. It doesn't necessarily have to be. But we found that other operational staff within organizations may not want to come to all of the events, but they want to come to some, and throughout different operational folks want to come based on maybe the title of the topic or the speaker or whatnot. So it's really a floating registration. People can take advantage of that. So it's a full-time and then maybe a floating one within the organization. So again, we're trying to elevate the profession, and now we can sign up for that, or you can even sign up to become on the list for more information about what we're doing on the website. That's businessdevelopmentguild.com. Number of opportunities to get involved. We're very excited to say that, I think I mentioned that we started in Phoenix, Arizona. Southern California has been quite active over the last 3 years. And I have to give kudos to the chapter as well. Back in February, they had a half-day business development leadership and strategy symposium, which went out really well. We just started in Denver, Colorado in February, and that chapter is off to a great start. So a number of opportunities to get involved, either through committees or really just giving us ideas from panelists, topics, any way you'd like to get involved. And if you're in a market maybe that we're not in right now that you think might fill a void, we think there's great opportunity. We'd love to have that conversation as well. So don't be shy and reach out. All right, we mentioned part of our offerings are our education. So we have something that we're very proud of, and that is the Certified Business Developer Curriculum. We have 3 graduating classes under our belt now, which we're really excited about. It consists of 12 individual classes that are taught by industry professionals. And the topics are what we believe goes into the makeup of not only what business development entails, but it adds to the knowledge base of the professional as well. Traditionally, we've started in May, so we'd have 1 afternoon a month for 6 months, 2 classes per afternoon. But the COVID virus has kind of put a cringe on that schedule a little bit, so stay tuned. But I would like to note that we are very close, and we're taking a very close look at a virtual platform to bring that opportunity starting this summer in a virtually. So stay tuned on that. We're in our final points of analysis of that platform. It's looking pretty good, but we want to make sure that we kind of cover all bases. So please stay tuned. More information and including the curriculum can be found on businessdevelopmentguild.com. And again, love to have a conversation. All right, quick shout out to the Southern California Advisory Board, made up of terrific professionals, a lot of passion, a lot of energy. So we want to say thank you to each and every one of them. Without that group and the whole community in Southern California, we would not be doing what we're doing today. So thank you. And I'm sure that if there are any questions, if you know anyone who'd like to reach out and learn more, please do so. All right. With that,
Joe, I think we wanted to do one more poll, yeah?
Yes. With that, before we get going on our panel, go ahead, Ellen. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, as Joe mentioned, these certainly are unprecedented times. COVID-19 is impacting quite a few businesses, and we want to hear from you. How have you adapted your BD efforts with COVID-19? So love to hear, are you making more calls? How are you and who are you making those calls to? Things kind of the same. If you could take a minute, we'd love your feedback. Great. So we're seeing a little bit of mixed results across the board. Looks like more calls to clients, more video calls as we've all encountered. Great. Well, thank you so much for your feedback. Joe, what do you think?
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks, everybody. Yeah, it's really interesting when talking to different folks. I think there are some common denominators. That the whole virtual movement obviously is there for everybody, but people are approaching at it, just depending on their own circumstance. So definitely interesting times. But thank you again. Okay, now we are to the main event. So thank you, everybody. And just before I turn it over to Barbara, our moderator, a quick note, this topic, the business development as a differentiator, this was born out of, I mentioned before that we had a symposium in February, a half-day symposium, and this came out of the discussion of one of our panel discussions from that symposium. And yes, we all look to have our processes and our own unique offerings to the marketplace as a differentiator, but how often do we actually talk about the actual process of developing the business as an opportunity for that? So that's where the topic came from. We have a great panel, an eclectic panel. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our moderator, Barbara Schuck, who's the principal and owner of Everest Marketing Services. Barbara, I will turn it over to you, and thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. Boy, what a great topic today, differentiation, your company, and for yourself. So we've got some great panelists today. I just kind of wanted to tee it up. Clients tell us all the time that they can't tell us apart, and yet we know that it's relationship-based, and if they see a person, often they think that's the company who I'm talking to. So we're going to dig deep today. We've got, as Joe said, an eclectic panelist. We've got some wonderful business developers. We've got some operations folks. We've got a client. We've got lots of perspectives and insights that we want to bring to the table and have a discussion about. So if clients can't tell us apart, then what is business development going to do about it? Business developers and operations folks are on the front line, client-facing all the time. So it's going to be a great conversation. I'm going to challenge the folks. If you hear something that you don't agree with, let's have some good, robust conversation to move it forward. And please do ask questions at the bottom so that we can address those at the end and have a great session today. So with that, I'll let each of the panelists introduce themselves. So Jim, would you like to kick us off?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jim Rogers, Senior Director of Facilities at Saddleback College, a 25,000-student, two-year community college located here in Mission Viejo in Southern California. I've been at Saddleback College for 8 years, and in the community colleges sector on both the public and private side for about 19 years now. Business development and the BD professionals are very important to us here at Saddleback, especially to me, because that's where the introduction to the college starts about your firm, your products, your services, et cetera, whether it's furniture, whether you're representing an architect or a contractor, or you're trying to sell us uniforms for our employees. It all begins with the business development person that's sitting down and meeting with me and my staff. So we think you're very important, and we welcome the opportunity to see more of you in the future. Thank you.
Brian?
Hi, this is Brian DiMartino. I'm a project director with W.E. O'Neill Construction in California. We're based in the Los Angeles area, so we're doing work all over Southern California and beyond. I've been in the industry for about 20 years, starting at the ground level, working my way up. So I've kind of gotten into that position where I'm the operations guy. I'm not a BD person. But I am in that position where we go on project interviews and work on pursuits, so interfacing with business development quite a bit. This is all very interesting to me, how we interface and make this work.
Walter?
Yeah, hi, my name is Walter O'Hare. I'm Managing Director with a financial services company by the name of Stout. We are headquartered in Chicago. We have 16 offices in the U.S., about 500 professionals. I'm on the business development sales side. I've been in kind of financial services for the last 20 years. I've been both a seller-doer and now am a seller only. And I've been at organizations that were aligned, and I've been at organizations that weren't that aligned. So I've seen a fair amount of different ways of doing business development.
Good. And Jennifer?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Delaporte, and I am the Director of Business Development for Pepper Construction. We are a national general contractor who is headquartered in Chicago, but we do work all over the country. We're a 90-plus year organization with revenues around $1 billion annually, and we have 2 offices in Ohio, 1 office in Indiana, and I serve the Milwaukee region out of our Milwaukee, Wisconsin office. I joined the team here about 2 years ago, and I previously spent almost 15 years of my career in Phoenix, Arizona. And I think that this topic, one of the reasons that it resonates so much with me is I actually transitioned from residential real estate into commercial real estate and the AEC industry, meaning architecture, engineering, and construction, mid-career. So for those of you who are in business development, you know how valuable your network is and how long it takes to build a viable network. And so transitioning mid-career, there were several peers and quite candidly competitors who had a much longer runway of time that they had built their network. So I had to be very ambitious and very strategic and very purposeful in the way that I differentiated myself and how I made sure to create value in that network. And I'm really excited to talk about how we can all do that in our own regions and our own markets and our own companies.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask some questions of each of the panelists and have them respond, and we'll kind of dig into this great topic. So Jennifer, you talked about business development being a lifestyle versus a job. Can you expand on that? And how does this tie into how BD can differentiate you and your company from the pack?
Absolutely. So thank you, Barbara. You know, again, I entered mid-career, and our AEC, Architecture, Engineering, and Construction, there's a lot of alignment in partners. And so, you know, it's interesting you bring up the comment I've said several times, which business development is a lifestyle, not a job. I think it's important that we define what business development is first. So in my mind, when I talk about that as a context, if I am sitting in front of a decision maker and they can say yes to me, then to me that is a sales function. And I do that. I do sales function. But as many of us business developers know, we'd love more opportunities to do that than we probably get access to. And at least in AEC, there's a team and timing and resumes and a whole variety of other things that can affect that selling relationship. Marketing is the act of influencing that buying decision in my mind. So any messages, any pictures, any language, even just the way you carry yourself at a networking event is all part of your corporate branding and personal branding, and all of that goes into marketing. To me, business development is the act and the art and the science of creating ambassadors in rooms that I am not in. So my intent with every relationship I build is to build one that is built on trust. And in order to do that, I have to be trustworthy. So a lot of times that leads to these long friendships, right? These really open, honest relationships. So when I say that business development is a lifestyle and not a job, I mean that if you're doing it right, you've built this amazing trust with the partners and clients that you work with. And we saw that a little bit in the survey feedback, right? There was, I think, almost 40% that was more actively talking to their clients and partners, probably because they authentically wanted to check on them and make sure they're doing well and seeing how they could help. So that's a really good sign for our industry, and that's a really good sign for everyone on this call. But how we use business development to differentiate ourselves in our company, I think the first thing is we have to be authentic. We have to be true to who we are both as a company and who we are as a person. I believe that a business developer, to be successful, has to function somewhat as a fiduciary. So what that means is it's actually a legal term, but it can also mean a legal or ethical relationship of trust, where I am putting my partner's needs ahead of my own. And so when I do meet one-on-one and do lead share, when I do meet to talk about opportunities, or when I meet to just talk about anything, I always attempt to understand the other person's needs first and then try and serve those needs authentically as best I can. And I think that that differentiation comes from an alignment in your value proposition. So that value proposition is always how you bring value to the market. And so being very candid, all of us do similar things. We all build buildings, we all have technology. What we do is somewhat standard. But the differentiator is how we do it and why we do it. And so I think if we really focus on companies that are aligned with our personal brand and how they approach the market and why they approach the market, I think that that's a win-win. So I'll give you an example. I work for Pepper Construction. When I was interviewing with them 2 years ago, they touted that they were a family company, that they were family-owned, that was a key part of their value, that they had these 90-year relationships, and they really treated their clients and their partners as an extension of the Pepper family. And we've all worked with family companies, some that really are that way and some aren't. Currently, with COVID, Pepper has kept every single employee working. We're all working remotely. They've done no layoffs. We've been able to keep most of our job sites open safely, some at the request of clients and other scenarios based on what states they were in. But to me, that is a complete alignment in their brand, their differentiation as a family company, and the fact that they authentically followed through on what they promised. So as a business developer, when I go out and tell my clients we're a family-owned company, and when we tell you we're going to do something, we, the Peppers, and all of our team stand by that, I know that that's true. So I think that those are the things we need to focus on, is being authentic, being transparent, being a fiduciary, and really aligning our personal value propositions with a company that is aligned with that, and then taking that to the market. Because if you can do that alignment between your company and the way you choose to ethically do business, it can be a powerhouse for the relationships and the amount of positive impact you can make in your market.
Awesome, awesome, very interesting. So let's move to Brian, who's on the other side of the BD Guild perspective. From the operations side. So you bring the operations perspective to our discussion today. In your experience, when the team is aligned and working well, what does that look like? And how does that help differentiate your team in the marketplace?
Looking at it from an operations perspective, so probably not thinking about the ins and outs of business development quite as much as the BD folks are. When it's successful, I'm thinking that's obviously when we're able to win a project, with a client. But to get to that point, it's when we're exchanging information fluidly, when it's going back and forth. It's not a different team scenario where BD does one thing, BD does its activities, and then we take over at some point and try to do the final part of the interview to win a project or whatever we have to do. The technical part of the proposal. It has to be a fluid exchange of information back and forth when you're, two groups or two people are really aligned. We're in the same company, but we're working on it from different ends. And we see that happen when the BD folks can make that initial introduction to a client. Maybe they get the foot in the door and get us shortlisted as a group of companies proposing on a project. And then the operations people have to come in and actually do the proposal. When the information goes kind of seamlessly, it was like you're talking to the same people. I think it was very distinct that somebody was selling you a company, and then operations people come in with sort of a different way of doing things or a different message. It's sounds disjointed. That probably turns clients off. So when it's working well, what it looks like to me is that we're all part of the same group, and it's just going from one person to the next as we go through the process. And I think that differentiates the companies that can do that well. And I think there are a lot of companies that do it pretty well, but that works for us when clients start to learn about our company. They go all the way from that point to the point where we finished an interview, maybe get selected for a project, and they say, yeah, your company, we got that whole perspective of your company all the way through, starting from a kind of a general perspective of the company all the way down to we're talking to individual people who are going to run the next project that we have. When we can make that all the same message, all the same values, to me, that's what it looks like when it's done correctly.
Awesome. Yeah, that alignment is amazing. So, Walter, you've got a kind of a different angle in your business, the valuation of assets. Where the stakes are high in the world, high finance and competition is intense, how do you differentiate your team when your fee's higher than the market? What do you do?
I mean, it all comes down to prior experience. So you basically say, look, you're in a business that, let's say you're in a steel business. We have 225 valuation professionals across the country. I, as the business development person, I'm going to do the research and, in essence, be your fiduciary and figure out who the best team is and what their experience is. So then I do my research and I say, hey, there's a team in Detroit and a team in Cleveland. I spoke to both of them. I think the team in Detroit has some more hands-on experience in your subsector of the steel industry. Here's who we've worked for. Here's what we've done. We can provide references. Sometimes if they're using like a high end law firm or something like that, I say, hey, you use these guys as your law firm. You don't use the local firm. We're a national firm, so we basically, our pricing is going to be higher than a regional provider. And I'm always honest. I said, look, there's a handful of firms that do the work as well as we do. We're not the best. We're within a group of firms that do really good work. And if you're talking to us, you probably can't go wrong. And here's kind of the value add and kind of personal touch. And, we're responsive. We're transparent. We basically try to, have a very open conversation. We never degrade a competitor. We never say, oh, those guys aren't good. We just say, hey, if you're talking to these 5 folks, you can pick anyone and you'll do fine. And then we try to differentiate ourselves. That's usually the approach we take. And we never second guess if someone decides to go with another provider. We just let it be.
Right. So
hey, Barbara,
it sounds like
can
a lot
I
of.
on that?
Sure.
So, I think additionally to everything that Walter said, this is Jennifer, I think that's where those advocates in rooms you're not in really come into play, right? And so if you have this network in those markets that you're competing in, yes, we can give a list of references, and the client is going to know that those references are people that are going to say good things. But if we can be active and targeted in building those relationships with, others in that market, they might also go to 2 or 3 other people that we don't have on that list. And if that person can say, you know what, Walter's team's amazing, we compete against them and they're awesome, or we've partnered with them and they did this, or I've heard about them, I've heard really good things. And that's where the network that you have and differentiating yourself and creating value in that network can really assist with this higher than the market, because most of what we're doing is service-oriented. It's a business-to-business service-oriented model. And so it's not typically commoditized unless it's a really bad market. And again, those relationships and the value of those relationships can really help you turn the division,
Yeah, this is Walter. One thing that I've done is I've basically gotten to know all my competitors. And I know what they do and I know what they do well. And I had a client call me on a Friday saying, we need this turned around by Monday. And can you do it? And I said, yeah, but the guy who I'm going to use for this, the best guy, is at SeaWorld in San Diego. So I called the guy's cell phone, left him a message. Then I called my competitor and said, hey, in a pinch, can you take this work on? It's Friday afternoon at 2. I need to get them an answer in an hour. And they said, yeah. And I said, what's your fee? And they said, oh, for this quick turn, it's it's going to be $30,000. And I said, okay. I had already told the client that if we could do it, it'd probably be 35 to 40. My guy in San Diego didn't get back to me. I called the company, said, hey, give me another half an hour. But worst case scenario, here's the name of the woman at the competitor. Here's her phone. Here's her email. I've already talked to her. She has capacity. Her team can do it. And her fee is 30. And they said, we'll give you half an hour. So half an hour later, my guy calls and says, we can do it. I called the client, and I expected the client to say, hey, can you match the other guy's fee? But they didn't. And they basically said, hey, this is great. We totally appreciate that you put our interests first. You basically said,
Absolutely.
We'll find you a solution. It will either be us or it will be a competitor that we like. And the competitor said, hey, I really appreciate a shot at it, and I'll keep you in mind. So, I think that, that's another example of being a fiduciary. Basically, your first order of business is helping the person who's asking you to provide services.
Awesome. So many things going through my head, at least on this. Jim, so you've heard what we've been talking about, and you bring the end user perspective. That's where the rubber hits the road. We all get on the line and say, who are you going to pick? You mentioned you're quite open to business developers and their teams, and thank you so much. We really appreciate that. Can you share your approach and philosophy on how your college procures and builds relationships?
Well, for starters, I'll meet with practically any business developer with any product or any project once. This is how we learn and find out what's out there in the marketplace. We learn what gives us a competitive advantage here at the college. We're a public entity, so we're obviously required to go out and ensure that we can prove that we were actually seeking competition. So I have pretty much an open door by appointment to meet with business development folks. I meet a lot of people at the conferences I attend. I have attended events that this organization has held here, the Southern California chapter, and I actively reach out and say, hey, look, come and see me. Well, we don't know if our product will work here. Well, come and see me anyway. Let's come and talk about it. And if not, then, well, we know. So I'm very open to sitting down with business development folks. I will tell you, though, what I don't do well is I don't respond well to email blasts, I don't respond to unsolicited phone calls to my private line. Of course, then I wonder how they got my private number. I don't do well with that, so it's more of a face-to-face, one-on-one. I've met you, I've talked to you, I invite you here, and would like to sit down and talk to you. And that's proven to be very, very successful for us here at the college, and also been very successful for those folks who want to do business. Again, we, as a public entity, we buy everything from soup to nuts. I mean, it's amazing what we're purchasing right now in facilities just based on the COVID-19 issues. So things I never thought that we would purchase before. And some of the contacts that I've kept, just their business card, I've been able to reach out to, and they didn't get any work 5 years ago, but they're getting work now. So I think those contacts are important. And developing and maintaining those relationships over the years, it's very successful for us, and that's how we go about doing it.
Thanks. It takes a while to develop a relationship, and a lot of times, like you say, things may not happen in the time frame that we would like, but when you manage those and maintain them over the long term, there's something that's probably going to happen. So thank you. So now I'm going to ask some questions and have a couple of you chime in on the answers. So Jim and Brian, questions for you. And this is one that we run into all the time. We all promote and position our A teams for the opportunities, but sometimes the timing can throw a wrench into things. What do we do when, for whatever reason, key personnel can no longer be dedicated to a project? What's the best answer? Jim and Brian.
This is Jim. I'll start off. I think the world that we live and work in nowadays, there are people constantly changing firms. 10, 15 years ago, the expectation was when a project manager came on to a job, he was going to be there through pre-construction, construction, closeout that he was committed to 3 years. I don't see that much anymore, and we've also found that it's not as critical. What is important for the companies that are providing key personnel is that if someone does leave for whatever reason and you have to replace them, one is I want to have approval over the replacement. So there would be an interview process, and I would sit down and chat with that person or that team to make sure that I thought they were a good fit. And our expectation would be you would provide someone of the same or higher quality than the person that's leaving. That's just the way business is. So I would expect that hole to be filled quickly and with quality folks. Now, the other scenario is if you came on board and you brought your A team and you did it to win a job here, and then 2 months later you pull that team off and send them someplace else and pull the old bait and switch. Well, I can tell you right now that's not going to go well for you here at Saddleback College, and that won't go well for you with me. So the bait and switch doesn't work. However, in the normal course of things, people come and go, and we just expect that quality people are going to be replaced with quality people, and we're going to have the opportunity to evaluate and make a decision collectively and move forward. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Brian. I think I can echo a lot of that from our perspective. You know, as the company that would be proposing the team or does propose the team, I think it is critically important. You know, it used to not be something that was requested, but now every contract we see actually has a clause that says that we can't change the team out without permission or without proposing and getting approval. Which is a good thing, but I think the important thing, as Jim was talking to, is having somebody that's receptive to it. So the things do come up that happen that, like Jim was saying, people leave, companies change, people leave, or projects sometimes get kind of stuck in a phase before they can start, and then that team has to go on to another project just because you can't pay people to wait while the project gets started. So if the project time frame changes and it's not anybody's fault, then there are a lot of reasons why that would happen. And I think what we see is it can become a big point of friction if somebody's not receptive to that. If somebody doesn't appreciate that things sometimes just have to change. But if they are, then it can be done really well, where we can say, as we go in with a different team or a different team member, go in with the proposed solution, saying this is the person we propose, and this is why they fit this role really well too. We almost could have proposed them originally. Maybe they weren't available at that time, but here they are. Propose it as a positive. It's not something that's taking away from the project, and that can actually, it keeps the relationship going. I thought it was interesting that Jim said it's not as critical these days. I hadn't heard that before from too many clients. We think it is pretty important to keep the team continuous, but it's good to know that the thought process is out there that, maybe it's the continuity of the company and the fact that we're thinking and making sure we're providing people, new people, if they have to be, that are of the same caliber as the previous people.
Interesting, and it kind of resonates with what Jennifer was saying really from the outset, that when the company's values align with the employees and everything, the internal story is the same as the external story. Probably a lot easier to make that change, and even though it's a little bit maybe bumpy, but possibly expected, it does help, I'm sure. So now let's go to Jennifer and Walter. This is another angle on the personal and company branding. You both are relatively new to your companies. You brought your personal brand to integrate with a company brand. Was that seamless from your perspective? And what should today's professionals be watching out for when we're trying to integrate the two? That is the company and the personal brand.
Walter, I'll follow you. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I joined Stout about a year ago from another evaluation firm where I had been about 9 years. Stout has quality professionals, a wider range of services. So the platform was, in my mind, a better platform. So that was kind of an easy thing to explain to my clients, to say, hey, I've joined a firm that has just as high quality a valuation practice, but we also have investment banking, expert witness work. We do insurance claim valuation work. We have management consulting, and so that was kind of easy. The clients and the network that I had, in essence, trusted me. So and what I did to some of them, I said, look, I've had a relationship with you for X number of years, and when I came to you, I said, look, I've worked at this valuation firm, and they're a good firm, and trust me. And at some point, you trusted me, and you're now a client. So what I'm telling you now is trust me again. And in this instance, I actually think that the new firm has a little bit more to offer and the same quality. And so it's just a question of kind of like, give us a shot. And, some clients, I said, if you want to try us on a smaller project, try us on a smaller project. And if that goes well, then, we can step it up and do a larger project for you. So there was, patience on my part. So I think the integration of my brand and the new platform wasn't really that much. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. So the first thing I would say is this. My current senior vice president, his name is Jeff Johnson. He runs our Milwaukee office. And he jokingly tells me I should stencil this on a pillow because I say it so often. But culture will eat anything for breakfast. Culture will eat strategy. It will eat talent. It will eat perfect team, perfect time, the perfect anything. So again, in the 10 years that I've been in the industry, when I went to transition, I was moving my family across the country. I was recruited out of Phoenix to take this role in Milwaukee. And so I did a lot of due diligence in the interview process, and I really wanted to make sure that the firm I was joining was aligned with my skill set, my style, and what their expectations were also mine. I actually teach the class on the CBD curriculum on business development expectations and accountability. So it's something that I'm pretty passionate about for business developers, and I think it's one of the key areas we have to be transparent and open on in order to have a successful, long-term, healthy career and, quite candidly, be successful. So with that, I know who I am. I'm very passionate about a few things. For those people who know me, they would probably define me as a productive disruptor. I'm not a wallflower. I'm not quiet. I'm a productive disruptor. I enjoy disrupting things. So my previous firm, it was a startup office in Phoenix. This firm, it's a startup office in Milwaukee. I've worked for other startups. Startups tend to be things that I'm very passionate about, and startups take a certain type of skill set that's different than maybe an office that has been established for, 30, 40 years. Their systems are established, ours aren't. So I knew my brand, I knew my skill set, and I knew that my skill set could create value for my team. And that was something that was important to me. I believe in efficiency and strategy. I had to have some part of the conversation in strategic planning. I serve a leadership role in my organization, so you talk about that alignment between operations and BD. I am on the operations leadership team. I have a seat at the table. I have a voice, and quite candidly, I'm allowed and empowered to drive all of the strategy, both internally for our Milwaukee team and externally in the market with our client engagement, partner engagement associations. And so I think the biggest thing a business developer can do is, one, when they are looking for a firm, ask those good questions and those honest questions and those direct questions about, am I going to fit in here, right? And this is who I know that I am, and this is what I bring. And I would much rather know that at the onset than be 6 or 8 or 12 or a year and a half in and then go, oh gosh, wow, this is a great team, but boy, they're quiet. And, they just, I try and get really enthusiastic about this pursuit, and they just don't even want to come to the interview, or, I think that alignment translates so much to success, and it can be felt as a differentiator when you're a business developer. So thus far, it has been seamless. We have a team of about 16 in our Milwaukee office, but can immediately leverage hundreds of employees out of our Chicago and Barrington offices. And so that scalability is fantastic. But I will also tell you that I always see my first line of clients as my internal team. And so as much as I want to service the clients and partners I have outside of the organization, I've always really focused on trying to get to know my internal team members, what their strengths are, what their desires are, what their needs are, and then again, making sure that I'm aligning those things with the clients I partner them with and with the partners I partner them with. Because if I can be that kind of matchmaker, then that just gives us a much higher probability of success. And all of those, I think, translate to that integration between a personal brand and a corporate brand.
Awesome. Interesting. Before we go on to the next question, I just wanted to remind all of the audience members that if you have a question or that's related to one of the things that we've already touched on, please feel free to use that Q&A box on your screen, so we'll address those. So keep those questions coming. So Walter and Jim, this is interesting. One of the ways that BD can differentiate is what and how one communicates when there's no project on the table. And we see that a lot possibly right now. Jim is an end user and Walter is a manager tasked with growing an office. How might business developers be effective in staying engaged? So this is for Walter and Jim.
So
Walter,
this is Walter. Yeah, I'll take it. So I spent a whole week noodling on this because when it became apparent that everything was getting shut down, most of my clients were kind of head down and focused solely on how much cash do we have in the business, do we have a line of credit we can draw on, and what does the business look like if we have no revenue or if we can't operate. And so I basically spent a week doing some research on capabilities that we have that maybe I could put together a different pitch deck. I built kind of lists to kind of go through data and stuff like that. And it was all geared towards just leaving my clients alone. And then after about a week or so, I reached out to people who I considered friends, where I, met their spouse and met their family, been to their house maybe. So basically my top level of friends / clients, and said to them, hey, do you have time to catch up on the phone? And then just said, what's going on, and then what are you focused on, and what do you need? And some people said, at the moment we only need money, so if you can't provide money, maybe we can work with you later. And so I kind of got a sense of what was going on, and then as the next week rolled around, I reached out to some more people, and so that was good. And then basically what I started doing was saying, look, I work with a lot of private equity companies, and they own middle market businesses. And so I started looking at exactly what they own. Like, you guys own 12 portfolio companies. Let me sit down, piece of paper, get on the web, figure out what do your companies do? Because mostly you call me and say, hey, I have a company, they do this, and can you help? And that I dig into that. And so now I had time on my hands, so I dug into everything that they owned. And I realized, so a bunch of people I work with have healthcare businesses. They have either radiology clinics or pain management centers or surgery centers. They have stuff that's patient-facing. Some is open, some is not. And then another client of mine has a business that does patient funding. So if you need to pay for a portion of some medical service out of your own pocket and you don't have the money, then you're going to delay it. And so these people who run these surgery centers and pain management centers and things like that, they're incentivized to say, hey, maybe we can help you find a way to pay your portion. There's a company that does this. They finance the business. They don't finance the individual. They basically finance the business and help the business make the loan to the patient. So I said, So then I called up a guy that I knew and I said, hey, you own these centers. Would you be interested in talking to these guys who provide some funding for patients who might be looking for funding? They're like, this is awesome. So I basically started doing, let's call it corporate matchmaking, which is I started taking a look at what my clients have and where it is that there's a business that maybe another client of mine has that they could work together. So it's very symbiotic, and there's it works. And so as I'm doing that, people are like, hey, this is great. This is not your normal business development effort. And I'm like, well, look, I'm just helping out because I've got time on my hands, and when things pick up again, maybe you remember, like, hey, Walter was the guy who actually didn't call us and say we've got another COVID-19 webinar. Didn't call us saying, hey, do you have a distressed company that we can do a fire sale for you? And basically it just left us alone, but tried to help. And so that's kind of business development in these times, which is trying to be creative and try to figure out how it is that you can help your clients if it doesn't consist out of providing them the very service that you normally sell them. So that's
really great.
That's that.
Awesome. So Jim, from your perspective, how might business developers stay engaged with you?
Well, first of all, a lot of the things that we do here at the college are long-term and have long lead times. And we go from one construction project to another. So if you don't win the big building that's going up now, you have to stay competitive to and be in the mix for the next RFQ&P that goes out, say, 12 months from now. So I encourage, for example, the architects, engineers, all the highly technical companies to reach out to me every 6 months to put something in your tickler file to say, hey, give me a call and we'll have a conversation about what's coming up. I also remind everyone, I send out a pretty regular email to many of our companies that do business with us, reminding them to check our website, because on our website, that's where all our bids are, all our RFQ&Ps, everything for certainly our construction projects are contained in there, and it has a great deal of information. So I encourage the folks that do business with us, whether, again, you're a designer or you're a builder or you're a truck driver, that you reach out to me at least every 6 months, some of them, if not sooner, just a simple phone call. By the way, if a call comes into my private line, I answer all my own calls. I don't screen any phone calls for anyone. I actually have a sticky over my phone because it comes up and says who it is. This way I don't know who's calling. So I answer my own phone. I take my own phone calls. In this way, I can maintain contact with the folks who are out there trying to do business with the college. There was one architect firm in particular about 7 years ago that continued to go after work, and they went 3 years and didn't get anything. They were becoming very discouraged, and I said, you need to hang in there, because once you get your nose under the tent, once you win one, everybody's going to know who you are, and you're going to do well. I know that you will. And next thing you know, over the course of the next 4 years, that firm was designing buildings worth almost up to $80 million total. So you have to stay with it. And they decided to stay engaged with me by emails and phone calls and getting together socially at various conferences and seeing each other. So it's incumbent upon the folks that want to do business with the college to reach out to me and stay in contact. And that's what I do. I encourage them to do it, and then it's up to me to reciprocate by taking their call, responding to their email, or answering their letter. So it's very important for us, again, to get the best competitive edge that we can here for a public entity, is that I stay engaged with these people, and that's how we go about it here at the college. And again, that's been very successful for us.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. It's refreshing to have clients with that kind of perspective. So another question for the team response for Jennifer and Brian. Business development is teamwork, and we've all had this challenge before. Let's say you have an awesome rock star project manager or a superintendent who may not be the best at interviews or meetings during the process of a pursuit. Managing the various personality types, they can make or break it. What are some of the strategies you've used to overcome teammate weaknesses?
Jennifer, you want to take that one first?
Sure, I can. So I think the first thing to keep in mind is, and it goes back to my earlier comment, in that my first line of clients is my internal team. And, you know, there's a gentleman out of Phoenix, his name is Rick Ireland, and he's been doing business development for many, many, many years, and he's just a very dynamic and amazing man. And I was once at an event, and I was on a panel, and he made a comment in the audience, and he said, you know what, you need to work twice as hard internally as you ever do externally. And I absolutely affirm with that statement. And I think for the, 75% of you, or I think it's, roughly 75% of you that said you have alignment between your ops team and your BD team, you're probably doing that. You're probably activating them. You're probably engaging with them. You're probably understanding what their workload is and what the pipeline looks like and what their needs are and what their personality types are and who they like to work with. And the more I think you can master that, the more I think you can serve your team, which in turn then serves your external clients and partners, because to Walter's point, it is like matchmaking. I also think that, you talk about a rock star PM or superintendent but might not be the best in interviews. Not all seller doers are sellers. And I think you have to ask them, do they want to be a seller doer? Because some seller doers, just because they advanced in the organization, they may not want to sell. They might just want to do. They might just want to build. So the first thing to keep in mind is we shouldn't make the assumption that all seller doers want to be seller doers. And if they don't, we need to then assist in the sales process and maybe cover some of that initial selling or that initial relationship building, kind of like what Jim referenced, and be that space. And until we get to the point where there's a technical question, then we can bring that person in. And then quite candidly, they're not necessarily selling, they're doing, because they're talking about their expertise, and then that intimidation factor goes away. The other thing I would tell you is for all of our Wisconsin interviews, I sit in on all of the interview prep. We do interview prep for all of our interviews when we can fit the time, which we make the time. And I would say practice makes comfortable. Maybe not perfect, but comfortable. And so for some of those folks who are uncomfortable in an interview setting, if you run through it several times, they get this mojo with the team. They get this gelling. They get this, again, this culture, right? And that will translate. And then you pick up on what they're passionate about. So then you can say, hey, Frank, remember when you talked about the roofing system and how that's really going to be dynamic from a sustainability perspective? Yeah. Well, why don't you talk a little bit more about that? And again, if you can find those hot buttons that they're passionate about and their personal brand and their differentiator, then it becomes seamless and it becomes this dynamic molding, right, of a team. And that's what most interviewing panels want to see. Is they don't want to see a collection of experts. They want to see a team. And so I can't say it enough, as much as you can possibly practice within, the current dynamic market and high demand market, I do not think it is wasted.
Yeah, Jennifer, this is Brian. I think that's a great point. The way I think of it is you're right with practice, and I think it's familiarity. And so practice for an individual presentation is great, because then people get more comfortable. That rock star that might not be comfortable getting in front of people and speaking becomes a little more comfortable. But it's also kind of like an ongoing process that not just one project, but over multiple projects or years and years. I've worked with those people. Great superintendent, the guy that runs a construction project in the field, great at that, probably the best there is. And we said, okay, we're going to go do this interview for this project, and he would start shaking and sweating, like somebody had to go give a speech in front of a crowd or something. He would, visibly disturbed by having to do this. And then I actually have worked with him for over 20 years now. So we go to do a presentation now, and I look at the same guy, and he doesn't have any physical sign of doing it. I know if when he's making little jokes and everything, he's deflecting his nervousness, or he's trying to lessen his nervousness a little bit. Nobody else really knows that, but he's still that same nervous guy. He's just got all those years of experience and having to go through it. So not ever becoming comfortable, like you were saying, not everybody wants to do it. but a lot of us just have to. We continue having to do it. So that experience of doing it over and over again will eventually push out the nervousness to where they could get up in front of an audience. If they're doing it every day, they may still hate it, but they can get up and speak really well. And one trick I tell, especially younger people, because of the way I looked at it when I came out of college and I was just a technical engineer just working on a small part of the project, and they would say, okay, now you have to go to an interview because I want to see the whole team. I was terrified, and the first few times I did it, I just sat there quietly because I didn't want to screw anything up. And then as I got to be more confident about my company, and I really believed the values, and I believed our company brought the right thing, and we're pursuing projects that are really good for us, then my mentality became, well, I have to go have a conversation. I really want to go talk to these people because I see these. I want to tell them why we're the best, or why I think we're the best fit, and I really think we are. And I'm actually passionate about what this client's goals are. I share the same goals. Then it became a different thing. It became, I wanted to get into that room. I could sit down comfortably with people. And that's what I tell people now, that the nervous rock star superintendent or the nervous engineer that hasn't done it before, we're just going to have a conversation with some people, and you're just going to tell them what you really want to tell them, what's really in your mind. Don't read from a script. Don't try to say things that sound good. Just go and have that genuine conversation. Like you're saying, where, hey, we've already talked about that roof. Remember, talk more about that roof system you like, that you're aware of, and then it becomes a natural conversation. And Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what clients like to see. They see that team that's worked well together and actually cares about what they're going to do. So this whole idea of people getting comfortable and being able to do it is what plays into being successful business developers.
Yeah,
I totally agree. And I think that there's this conveyance of trust, right? Again, everything that we do, whether we're a seller doer or a business developer, is to build trust in the products that we offer, right? Whether it's our team or whatever system we're going to suggest. Pepper has a very strong pre-construction team, and we have a very strong high-performance team, which focuses on technology and some just amazing, resource management tools and such. So again, the more that you can really just convey these things to the client and build trust in what you're saying in a very transparent and open and honest way, that's going to translate long term, right? And so that's exactly what you're referencing. And again, if you ask someone to talk about something that they're technically good at, they could talk all day, right? So if you ask that rockstar PM, talk about this, they may not be nervous, but they will definitely want to talk about whatever it is that they know, whether they're an introvert or an extrovert. And I think that can be a differentiator in any scenario, whether it's a lunch, a breakfast, an interview, or just a client meeting.
Awesome. Yeah, confidence is an amazing differentiator and builder of relationships. So I know we're kind of approaching our hard stop on this. We've got one more poll question that relates to COVID, and then I want to have the panelists wrap up with one last question. So thanks for staying on. If y'all, for the audience, if you've got any questions, quickly type them in and we'll address them. But if we want to go with that last poll question, and then we'll wrap it up in the next 6 or 7 minutes.
Thanks, Barbara. Yeah, really great information. Appreciate all of the panel sharing. But we want to hear from you. Again, things are kind of the new normal right now. So how do you think this time of COVID is serving as an opportunity to differentiate yourself or your company? We've heard a little bit from the panel. We'd love to hear from you. There's also going to be a survey after the discussion, and we would love for you to share additional information if you're not able to do that here. So looks like adaptability is definitely right up there, which makes sense. We'll give the poll just one more minute. Great feedback. And as Barbara mentioned, if you have any questions for the panel, we have a few minutes left. We'd be happy to take some Q&A. Just type them in the chat window. Great. Thank you so much. So it looks like adaptability and, really connecting with your relationships are key. Barbara, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So on that note, these are some amazing people that we've got here, and I want to kind of close with wrapping this back all up with what the purpose of the BD Guild is. and that is to build a bridge between BD and operations. And we've had some great ideas with this conversation. So for the panelists, and just a very brief response to this, maybe some key words that you want us all to leave with. From where you sit, whether you're the end user, the BD, the different operational positions, and even the geography where you're from, what suggestions do you have to help teams be better aligned? You've talked about transparency. You've talked about the seamlessness. You've talked about encouraging each other and focusing on what makes people comfortable. So to each of you panelists, how do you build this bridge? What's one thing we could do to help the audience with a good leaving message? So I'll start with Brian. What would you say?
Wow, I think to give kind of a non-standard answer, I think I'd go with the more as companies we can be aligned between one another on our values and the corporate values and what our goals are. So not necessarily a specific task or thing, but I think if we're all constantly talking about those values, so we all share those values when we go to talk to clients in the business development role, that'll come through, and I think that's what they're really looking for.
Awesome, Walter. What say you?
I guess I would just brainstorm with the people at the firm and say, hey, what do you think we should do in terms of client outreach, or what have you tried that's worked, or have you talked to somebody who's at another firm and they've come up with just an interesting approach? Just bounce a lot of ideas around and see what we can come up with. The overall goal is, let's keep in touch with our clients and try to help our clients. And one person can just come up with whatever number of ideas themselves, and so you just need to expand that and see kind of group think. What's the universe of things that we can possibly do, and then just go through it and see what you think is going to work.
Ooh, awesome. Love that. Expanding the opportunity for innovation. Jennifer, we'll go with you next.
I think the word that comes to mind for me is empathy and meeting people where they're at. So what I mean by that is when I do meet with my team or the operations folks, I try and meet them where they're at. So are they up to their ears on a huge project and have a huge amount of workload and aren't thinking about business development efforts because their bell curve is really high right now? Or are they just starting out and new at the firm and really hungry and want to get a promotion within 18 months? So they're hoping to be very active in networking and very active in business development. So they want to partner with me everywhere I go, right? So that they can really dive in. So, I ask operations folks to have some empathy with me, and a lot of the conversations I'll have is I'll say, hey, I think the interesting thing about business development is most of our clients that we bring in are new clients, which means they're higher risk. And I always say, I use this term, they're other people's children. So what I mean by that is when I bring it to my operations leader, like Brian, and I say, Brian, I have this great project. It's a new opportunity. This is the client. I want you to take a look at it. Well, Brian has his kids. He has his 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 different clients that he's been working with for decades, right? And so if he brings another client into his home, i.e. child, that child might function the same as his other children, and it might not. It's a higher risk scenario. So I think that's where a lot of times operations and BD can have a challenge, because BD will do all this upfront work for 18 or 24 months and want to bring in a new client, and then they'll finally get to operations, and operations will be like, I don't know, we really don't know them, or that project isn't big enough, or, I'm really up to my ears right now. I just don't think that, can we go back to them in 6 or 8 months? So again, I think having that open communication and that go, no-go, and those dialogues very early on when you're pursuing a particular client or partner are integral. And 2, that empathy of, okay, Brian, I'm just going to use you for example. Brian, I know that this is a new client and we haven't really worked with them, and this is only a, $4 million project or $10 million, whatever or a $100,000 project. But if we do this can pave the way for these other opportunities. So can we explore this together? And I think the more that we can foster an environment of empathy between operations and BD and allow operations to say back, well, Jen, maybe we can't pursue that client because of this, this, and this, and just meeting each other where we're at, the more benefit everyone will have, and it'll continue that 75% that we saw in the beginning of the survey. One other thing, I see that there was a question that came in directed to me that said, are there any other key pieces of advice from someone who is trying to get their foot in the door in BD? I think again, the more you can meet with people and just see what they need and then try and deliver that. Walter made a really good point about corporate matchmaking. There's a quick story that I'm going to tell. So when I first started out in BD, nobody knew me. I hadn't come from any other firm, and a lot of partnerships had already been established. So I'd go to networking events and people would be in these little circles, and I'd have to walk in and they wouldn't know me. And I'm definitely not an introvert or a wallflower, but you just kind of had to break through. So what I did was I started wearing really bright colors. I would wear really bright colored coats and shirts, and I would always be just very vibrant because the majority of the people I was meeting were government officials or corporate folks who were in navy, black, or blue. And so then I would walk around the room and I'd introduce myself to as many people as I could. And finally people would be like, who are you? Because they'd noticed me and my colors and just my extroversion and my desire to want to connect with people. And I say, well, I'm Jennifer and I'm with this firm and I really want to meet you for coffee and see what it is that you're working on and see if I can help. And then from there, every time somebody said, well, I need help with this, I would try and help them. And so for those people who are just starting out in BD or early in BD, or maybe having challenges with getting traction with relationships, that word fiduciary, that idea of putting other people's needs in front of yours and then helping them with that, Walter kind of referenced this too, it does pay out, because at some point that same person, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but 6 months from now or a year from now, they're going to go, you know what, Jen has always really tried to help me here, tried to help me there. And it might even not be professional. It might be personal. It might be connecting them with a coach or connecting them with, a particular service they need. But whatever they need, I try and deliver. And I believe that as human beings, we appreciate that, and that there's gratitude inherent in that relationship, and it will translate to a relationship of trust. And so the more I can create trust with people, and the more anyone who's meeting with others, the more you can look out for their benefit. It's an altruistic way to do business development, but I do believe that that's why I feel it's the lifestyle, and it does produce results because you're doing it for the right reason.
Thank you so much. So I want to end with Jim and his comments. We've got one quick question in like 1 minute. Real quick, Brian, in a couple of seconds, can you answer how does operations deal with backfilling, running a project that BD presented but is not run the way it was portrayed? Is there a quick answer to that?
Yeah, I think the question is saying it was sold a certain way as a certain team or certain thing we were going to do, and then now it's not happening that way, or maybe those people aren't available. And again, it's like Jim was saying, it's we have to swap out a team. You have to be honest and forthcoming and say, this is what's going on. This is why something's not running correctly. This is why somebody has to change. This is what the cause of the issue is. And then come with a solution. Just always walk in with a solution, a proposed solution. And, if you need to swap a team or you need to do something different, you need to ask permission to do that. Just identify the problem, be upfront, have the solution, and then talk about it. Just don't try to just ram something through or be sneaky about it.
Awesome, good. Okay, Jim, we've left you with about a minute to go. What say you with all of these thoughts from the client's perspective? What's your one or two words that you want to leave us with from your perspective about differentiating the company and the firm? The company and the individual.
What value and what intangibles do you bring to helping us here at Saddleback College? What's the value and what's intangibles? We're not always looking for the lowest price. We don't look to grind people down. Obviously, we want to get a fair price, but we take a look at the company and say, okay, what value do you bring? And then your intangibles, what can we see that you bring to the job that's going to benefit what we do here? So value and intangibles are probably more important than price.
Awesome. Oh, thank you so much. Joe, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Well, I want to say thank you to the panel, and Barbara, thank you. And special thank you to everybody, but also for Barbara and Jennifer in the Central Time Zone. I know you're a couple hours ahead of us, so thank you for your schedule. Walter up in San Francisco, and then Brian and Jim in Southern California. So again, another opportunity to kind of broaden our reach a little bit, broaden our perspective, so we appreciate that. We do have a couple other things on the calendar in addition to our certified classes that I mentioned earlier, so stay tuned for that. Between our Phoenix is going to have a meeting in May, and then Denver is setting up in first part of June. So stay tuned, and then Southern California chapter at the end of June as well. Hopefully, we will be back to semi or live if we're able to, but if not, we'll do what we can to stay engaged. So with that, I just want to say thank you to everybody, and please fill out the survey. We'd love to get your thoughts, and we'll see you next time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.